This is a Meta Quest 3. If you buy one of these, you'll get this for free. This is Asgard's Wrath 2, a game that sits on a mighty 92 on OpenCritic. In 2023 only Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and Baldur's Gate 3 have higher review scores. This is the Valve Index. If you buy one of these, you'll get this for free. This is Half-Life Alyx. It sits at a mighty 93 on OpenCritic. In 2020 only Persona 5 Royal and Hades had higher review scores. This is a PSVR 2. If you buy one of these, you get to buy this for $50 instead of $70. This is Horizon Call of the Mountain. It's not quite in the top 100 of the best rated games of 2023, it's below 150 actually, but you get a $20 discount. Yay! I know the game is nearly a year old and there are plenty of good reviews out there, but I just played it and I not only enjoy playing VR games, I also enjoy talking about them. At the end of the day, that's the reason I created the channel. So let's talk about Horizon Call of the Mountain. If you own a PlayStation VR 2, you most likely have already played this, so I direct this mainly at those of you who are considering getting one. If you do, then you'll have to make a choice. Is it worth paying the extra $50 for the bundle, or should you rather invest into, I don't know, Resident Evil 4 or something? As you might have gleaned from my intro, I think the game is overpriced, vastly overpriced, but it's not as easy as to say don't get it, it's too expensive. Because there are things here that are worth experiencing. The best thing I can do here is to show you what you're actually getting into, because this might not be the type of game you are expecting, and tell you what I enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy. The game had actually plenty for both categories. The main thing you have to be aware of is this is a climbing game. It is not a game about hunting giant robosauruses. It's a game about climbing a mountain, several mountains in fact, that's the title. You spend the vast majority of the playtime climbing, the rest of the time is evenly distributed between looking at things and shooting arrows at giant robosauruses. That's important to point out because most of the footage you'll see about the game is combat. That's just way more interesting to show and look at. But that's only a pretty small part of the actual gameplay. Before we get into the gameplay mechanics, let's talk about presentation, because that is the easiest part. The first thing you'll notice is that the game is shockingly beautiful. Not surprising for a Horizon game, they were always pretty to look at, but for a VR game, Call of the Mountain's biggest achievement might be to prove a point. The point being that the technology is actually here to make VR games with incredible visual fidelity. And that's an area that VR is still very much struggling with. So I'm mainly a PC VR player, right? And for me it's so refreshing. Having this game that looks amazing and just runs perfectly smooth for everyone without having to optimize or use third-party tools or anything, it just works. It's so simple, it's nice. I like fiddling with stuff like any other guy, but sometimes it's nice to just press play. When you get further into the game, you'll realize that it's actually not as impressive as it seems on first glance. The play spaces are all tiny, so the majority of things you'll see are just pre-rendered backgrounds. I'm pretty sure it would have been impossible to make something as open as the mainline Horizon games looking nearly as good as this in VR. That is a challenge, Guerrilla Games, prove me wrong, I dare you. But still, it sets a new milestone for VR visuals, and that's an important achievement. You'll play as Reyes, a former Shadow Carja, being given the chance to redeem himself by going after his brother, who has gone AWOL on an important mission. The story is fine, it's nothing that will keep you up at night, nothing that will stay with you after you put down your controllers, but it's well written, with decent characters and dialogue. Voice acting is outstanding, it's AAA level quality. The game takes place during the events of Horizon Zero Dawn. While it's a standalone story, you'll probably be a bit confused if you have not played Zero Dawn. The game throws a lot of words at you without explaining them. What is a Shadow Carja or a Carja in general? What's the difference between an old Sun King and a new Sun King? What is an Oseram and why would he hold a grudge?
Passed through it, on towards the mountains, just as all the machines that came afterwards have. It's as if they're searching for something.
So you follow your brother up the mountain, every climbable spot is clearly marked in white or yellow, and you just follow a perfectly linear path. There are two 2 sections in the game that have branching paths, so you choose one at random and continue following that linear path. The further you get into the game, the more climbing tools you will unlock. If you hope this would open up the gameplay a bit, then nope, you'd be wrong. Every climbing tool needs a dedicated fixture in the environment. The pick needs a certain type of rock, the swing thing needs this ring thing, the zipline thing needs this cushions, and so on. You don't get to decide which tool is best for the job. There's always only one way to do it, and that is always very clearly marked. There's no puzzle to it. Well, there are 1 or 2 very simple puzzles. There's no challenge to it. The whole thing is honestly much more of a climbing activity than a game. There's basically no player agency. That all sounds rather boring, does it not? Well, yes, but I actually still did enjoy it for 2 reasons. The first reason is jank, or rather the absence thereof. As VR gamers, we are all accustomed to a fair share of jank. I've seen people take the stance that VR without jank does not exist, which is not true, but it's undeniable that there's a lot of jank in a lot of VR games. Not here. This thing here is ultra polished. There are no bugs, at least I did not encounter any. There's no jank, and I'm not saying there's a very little jank, there's no jank. Everything the game allows you to do works perfectly, 100%. There was not a single time when I did try to do something and it did not work because of control issues. Either it is not in the game or it works with 100% reliability. I was very impressed by that. The second reason I enjoyed this part of the game is just because of how beautiful everything is. You'll just take in these breathtaking sceneries and have a little physical activity on the side. You'll be doing this all the time, right? That's nice, it's not a bad experience, and it's not only the scenery. The game will often have things going on around you. At one point you'll be chased by a thunderjaw while climbing.
Whoa.
That is pretty to look at. The models, the animations is all absolutely gorgeous. Look, I'm a bit hesitant at this point because I'll have to bring up the game's biggest shortcoming. That not only brings this part down a few, but basically every other gameplay element too. And that problem is difficulty. The game does not want you to fail. It is absurdly easy. Not every game needs to be difficult, I get that, but this lack of difficulty has consequences that permeate through the whole experience. Right from the start, the game teaches you that the machines are no threat, even though the dialogue says otherwise. So when this giant thunderjaw pursues you, it's very pretty, it really is, but you just don't feel threatened. Because you know you are not in any danger. And I mean, you know you are not in any danger in game. In a different game, the exact same sequence could be so much more intense. It really is incredibly well made. It is over 3 years ago now that I have played Half-Life Alyx, and I still think about Jeff from time to time. I kind of feel bad for the animation department at Guerrilla. They have done such a good job here, but I doubt many people will remember any of it after a couple of days. This game is kind of like a visit to the zoo, or rather a climb through a zoo. You know there are dangerous animals there, but you also know you are perfectly safe, so you just enjoy how beautiful and majestic they look. There are more of these scenes, more of these curated sequences. They all suffer from the same problem. Nothing feels impactful, nothing seems to matter. Besides looking at pretty things, there are a few more distractions from climbing. There are materials to find to craft special arrows. There's a small crafting activity which I found enjoyable. It's fast enough to not become annoying. It slows time while you do it, so you can easily use it in combat. Definitely more interesting than the press square to craft of the flat games. Then there are collectibles to find, most notable these beacons you'll have to shoot. Some of them are pretty well hidden, you gotta find them all if you want your platinum trophy. One of the bigger distractions are the stealth sections. So most of the time stealth sections are during climbing. They work after the motto, if you can't see them, they can't see you. So it's sufficient to have your head behind a beam and your whole body apparently becomes invisible. But there are also these ankle deep tall grass stealth sections. Here you're good to go if the enemies can't see your feet. It's really stupid. That seems like a minor point to complain about, but in a game as polished as this really stood out. It felt incredibly ridiculous. The real problem with the stealth system though is again difficulty. If you get spotted, you'll have to fight. So far so good. However, these stealth sections are only with watchers and they pretty much fall apart if you so much as glance at them. If you haven't played any Horizon games, watchers are the weakest machines. They are easy to kill in all Horizon games, but they have a specific purpose. They alert other machines to your presence if they spot you, and these other machines might be far more dangerous. There's no such mechanic in Call of the Mountain. You'll immediately learn that the game will not punish you for failing the stealth, so you'll just ignore the whole mechanic and either kill the watchers real quick or just ignore them as well. If you keep climbing at a steady pace, they won't be able to hit you. It's pathetic, really. While we are on the topic of killing machines, another distraction from climbing is combat. These stealth sections are actually the only parts of the game where you can freely move while in combat. All proper combat encounters are in specific arenas that will disable movement. You'll just be able to dodge left or right, most of the times in a big circle, sometimes on a ledge or something. I'll tell you straight away, after the first 3 hours or so of the game, I was ready to give this thing a devastating review. Combat is not only easy, it is also incredibly simplistic. The game basically strips you of all freedom, of all choice, and reduces combat to a 2-button event: dodge and shoot. Over the course of the game, new mechanics get introduced at a very slow pace, opening up the combat sandbox a little bit, so that towards the end of the game it felt somewhat okayish. You get access to different arrow types that will stun or put a dot on the target or do more damage to individual parts. Enemies have different parts you can target. You can pretty much ignore that early game, but later when fighting the bigger machines, it can be helpful to remove a weapon or hit a blaze canister for some chunky explosion damage. You even get access to the sling, which allows you to freeze enemies, but I did not use that much. I'm really confused why they chose to take away free movement in combat. That does not make any sense to me. It does not only make the combat experience worse, the transitions are also pretty bad. When you enter a combat arena, the game fades to black and teleports you a bit. When you defeat your enemy, again the fade to black to get you back into free movement mode. It's jarring. It takes you out of the experience. Maybe it's due to technical limitations, I don't know, I don't get it. As the rest of the game, combat is very easy. The game gives you unlimited heals during every encounter. At least I think they are unlimited, I never used them too much. The absence of difficulty also impacts the narrative. Early in the game, the character is worried that he'll have to fight a scrapper, that are these little things. A bit later, probably in the same game session or the next, he'll be taking down giant thunderjaws on stormbirds, and it's super easy, barely an inconvenience. I get why they did it, it's a short game and they wanted to put as many machines as they can into it. Fighting the big ones is obviously far more epic, so it makes sense, but narratively it does not work at all. Sure, Aloy takes down Thunderjaws too, but between her first Watcher and her first Thunderjaw are tens of hours of playtime, a lot of leveling up, a lot of gearing up, that's all missing here. Early on it dawned on me that I might not be the target audience for this game. This is supposed to be the first thing a new owner of a PSVR 2 gets to experience, and it's clearly tailored toward people that never ever used VR before, but even for that I don't think it's tuned quite right. Will it be challenging enough for first time VR users? I don't think so, honestly. It's not that you can't die in the game. You can fall while climbing if you let go. You can't just walk off a ledge, there will be invisible walls. You also can't miss a jump because you can't jump basically. There are these marked jump spots that you will have to walk on and do a little gesture, and the character will do a scripted jump that's always exactly the same and slows down time significantly so that you have ample time to grab onto whatever needs grabbing. It's pretty lame. You can also die in combat. During the final boss encounter I died twice. It still felt way too easy. I just was not paying attention because the game taught me that I don't have to pay attention up until that point. But yeah, you're not invincible. You'll have to dodge attacks and use cover in those arenas that have cover. The later game fights were enjoyable enough for me, but I feel they could have been much better if the difficulty was tuned better and player freedom was not restricted so much.
There, Flint Hawks. They're taking a machine apart.
Apart from the main campaign, you can do a little 5-minute or so boat safari. That seems to be a metaphor for the whole game. You might as well do it. It's as pretty to look at as everything else here. And then there's the challenge hub, which has 2 challenges for you, an archery challenge and a climbing challenge. If you want your platinum trophy, you will have to beat Aloy's score, and that is actually not easy. It took me a couple of tries. I did not mind it. It's the only thing in the entire game that's actually challenging. It took me about 5 hours to play through the campaign. I have 12 hours on the clock after getting the platinum trophy, which involved playing through the campaign, mastering the 2 challenges and then playing through the whole campaign again to find all the collectibles. Yes, it's a short game, but to be completely honest, I don't think it's too short. It felt quite alright. The story was concluded in a satisfying way. Any longer and the game might have overstayed its welcome. I mean, for how long can you possibly keep a game about climbing a mountain entertaining? So I don't think the game is too short, I just think it is way too expensive. As primarily a showcase for the potential of the hardware, this should have been free with every purchase. For what it offers gameplay wise, $20 would be more in line of what other games offer. Sure, it's prettier than any other VR game on the market, but gameplay is also way shallower than most other VR games, so yeah. As a showcase of what the hardware could be capable of, it works pretty well. It definitely shows the power of the system in an impressive way. Unfortunately, it also very prominently shows the PSVR 2's biggest weakness. That is, in my experience, the screen door effect. I knew before from reviews that the screen door effect is a problem, but I did not expect it to be that bad. It is pretty bad. But the thing is, you only really see it when you are not distracted. Especially in the later game fights, I was entertained enough not to see it anymore, then it's fine. But most of the game is so calm, so serene. You'll just stand there or hang there and take in the gorgeous scenery, and then you'll see the screen door effect very prominently. It's a problem. You have the small grid that obviously does not scale with the distance of the object you are looking at, so it makes everything feel a little bit flatter than it should be. A more action-oriented experience would probably have done a better job to hide this hardware flaw. Believe it or not, the Quest 3 released the same year as the PSVR 2. It's cheaper and has so much better optics, it's not even close. But it only shows that we are not there yet. This is still the early adopter phase for VR. The technology still evolves so rapidly that it's hard to bring a product to the consumer that will not immediately feel outdated. It's a good thing actually. It means that more and better things are to come in a very near future. That is it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video and tell me, did you enjoy Call of the Mountain? And if you haven't played it yet, are you still interested in checking it out? See you in the next one.